What is up, you guys? We are here for our midweek alchemy message. I hope you're doing well. I am feeling all kinds of things, really. I was feeling pretty rough earlier in today, just thinking about a million robots and AI and all of the dystopian sci-fi movies that depict what life is like once that kind of thing takes over. And it was just very heavy and scary. Whilst also at the same time, I'm feeling like a rejuvenation of energy and inspiration and motivation. And so I think that really ties in to our message for today. So right out the gate, we've got Spring from our Wild Unknown Alchemy deck, followed by Mortifico or Mortification, which was reversed. And don't forget, on Monday we had the sister card of this in its sister deck, the Underworld, followed by the Alchemical Wedding. Underneath Spring, we've got Knight of Pentacles. Underneath Mortifico, we have King of Wands showing up again, beating his drum, marching to the beat of his own drum and fervor. And then we have the Chariot with the Alchemical Wedding. So it's a really interesting kind of energy we've got going on. There's this resurgence of energy coming up with this Spring card. But it's like, there in a way we have this awakening inspiration to go after our goals. Maybe we're continuing the same goals from last year, but maybe you've just had a rebirth of excitement and determination. Maybe you have new goals that you're pursuing and you're anxious to start seeing them gather momentum. But we can't really rush forward yet. So we still have our Mars retrograde doing its thing for a while. I think it's in retrograde maybe until spring. I'm not very good at keeping up with the exact dates sometimes with our astrology. There's always a lot happening, but we can usually tune into the energy regardless of whether we know the specifics around the aspects. But we still have our Mars retrograde, which is that Mars is our drive, our assertiveness to go out and take action and get things done. That fighting spirit, that warrior. But at the same time, there's a lot of important work to be done during winter. We're still in this winter phase of the decay and the death and the letting go. And we're really experiencing the death of the old timeline. I know myself personally, that was part of the heaviness this morning and some of the thoughts that I've had recently. It's with all this climate change and, with disasters happening, when you see Hurricane Helene and the fires in LA and you see the landscapes just devastated and things that you loved about the architecture of your towns and cities, it's just gone. And so it's we're really having to mourn the old world. And life as we knew it is changing. The age of innocence is over. The robots are coming. And that is going to change so much. And I grew up in the 80s. So I've seen so much just in the 40 years that I've been alive on Earth, all the changes and how fast it happens. And I remember just the sweet nostalgia of having nothing to do, not knowing everything that was going on all the time, not being worried about running out of resources, not being worried about our fresh water supply, Even the town that I grew up in used to be rural, and it used to be rolling hills and nature everywhere. And now it's this crowded, shopping center, Target, Best Buy, and everybody's like, oh, this is so great. We're so, modern, we're so built up. And it's like, what do we really have to show for it? Kohl's, I miss that space. And I have this wildlife preserve behind my house. I live backed up to the park in Davidson County, Shelby Park. And I'm so grateful for that. And I spend so much time in that forest. And I just think, oh my gosh, what if we get to a point where our parks aren't protected? There's been talk about getting rid of the library, and it's like, well, what, and I'm just thinking about these things, like, what if this really happens? What's going to happen to all those books? What are they going to do to them? Where are they going to go? And it's just like, I feel like it's so important that we're paying attention, right? That we are paying attention to what we are let go and what we need to hold on to. And we need to really hold on to things that keep our humanity alive, even down to just using art or AI for your art. It's like, well, yes, it's easier and it's faster, but what about the mastery of human skills? What about the Renaissance? We wouldn't have the Renaissance painters, and it just cheapens the human spirit and the human talent and the hands that take pride in mastering an art and doing something incredible. It's just like nothing is made well anymore. It's just about pumping it out fast and cheap and making the profits fat. And it's just, I miss the simpler times. I do. And there's no coming back. There's no getting them back. And so we've got this kind of death happening of the old timeline, and we're mourning that as we're seeing new things developing. And yes, there are positive aspects of the new things developing, but human beings, it takes us work to reveal the positive in things, and it seems that it slips into darkness so fast, especially the easier things get and the cheaper things get and the faster things happen. Even just talk about not taxing cash tips has gotten people that are in that frame of thinking and that school of thought, they're already tipping less. And it's like, I don't make much as a server, but when you're starting to get greedy and cheap about well, they're not getting taxed on their cash tips, and then they're just talking about not taxing tips, and then now people are already getting stingier with their tips because they're like, well, they're not going to be taxed for them. It's like, nobody's getting rich, and the money that we're making barely covers living expenses, and every time you make more, you have more that you have to pay for insurance. So it's people are everything's just slipping away. So please keep tipping people at least 20% on the total of your check, because we have to tip out our support staff. We basically pay them. And we're not robots. We have needs. We have, bills to pay. Everybody's got to make a living, and you like going and sitting down and having someone take care of you. So just continue to go by the traditional standard tippage, please. Sorry, there's just a lot of existential crisis coming at us all at once. So yeah, we're kind of letting go of the old timeline and the old world, and there's such a mix of feeling. Sure, AI can help in the medical field, but also it can do way more damage than it's helping. All of these robots getting built, they're demonstrating, look how they can cut, wheat out of a field so fast, never get tired, don't have to get paid, right? Look at all the things the robots can do. And look how strong they are, and look how high they can jump, and look how almost like impenetrable they are, right? And indestructible. And it's like, I'm like, does anybody really see or understand what's going on here? Like, this isn't good. Like, we should not be excited about the robots coming in. And they're trying to pass them off like they're going to be our little housekeepers making like small talk. But this is pretty expensive pet there. And I think that it's a pretty dangerous pet to have too. A pet that can easily turn on you very quickly. And it scares me to think of what might happen, and just the general crowding that they're going to cause. I mean, I don't even like the scooters everywhere, right? So now we're going to have, what, droids walking around? So that's all weird. So that's like on this global kind of outward projected existential crisis that's happening this week. But then at the same time, there's these other things happening inside of us. And so there's this spring happening, and a rebirth and an awakening, and a resurgence of the respect and value of the human spirit and the human soul and our life, and what our life means and what we do with our life. So there is this excitement to move forward into, pushing our projects and creating things and getting into the year and feeling like we're moving forward. And it's like we're sitting here like Knight of Pentacles, so slow, so plodding. We were feeling impatient. We want to rush forward. But the key is to keep wintering. Let winter do its thing. We still have a few weeks to really sit in that darkness and just letting all of those feelings come through and pass through, and watching all of those memories and thinking about that, and watching this consciousness come to life. Right? So don't rush through and try to skip winter and just go straight to spring because we want the happy, warm, fun times, right? We really need to sit in this winter spirit and let it do its thing on us. The Mortifico card here, I feel there's so many layers of all of these cards for this reading. While we are anxious for spring, and we are anxious for our dreams to start taking off, they're not going to yet. We need to slow down. We need to accept the fact that we're in this Mars retrograde for a reason. It is serving our unfolding and our development. But what we can do is take slow and steady and consistent steps with with spring in our eye, right? Aiming for spring, knowing that once spring comes, things are really going to take off in a new level. But for now, we need to be accepting where we are in this moment and taking like easy, attainable steps, one after the other to get there. In no hurry. Don't take on too much. Just do things that you can manage, that you can complete, and have that sense of achievement, right? So just keep moving towards that springtime energy, one step at a time, slow, steady, consistent, dependable. We're learning about discipline and structure and being dependable with ourselves and showing up consistently with our goals. So don't feel like you need to push yourself to get it all done. Don't be so impulsive. Just get more grounded and more consistent. Everything will take off in good time. So don't let everything slide and don't do anything until spring, but keep doing your work and don't get impatient with yourself or frustrated, because your steps are going to add up and it's really going to show come springtime. But we're not going to get a lot of big results until then. So just keep going, keep trusting, keep believing in yourself. Don't throw in the towel. Don't slow down. Don't give up. Just keep that steady pace, that steady, achievable pace. Now, while we're doing that, it's like, while we're kind of mourning the old timeline and we're seeing the lay of the land that we're looking at, and we're also thinking about the life that we're trying to create within this. And so, we're really like this King of Wands he has this fire in his heart and this passion for his convictions and what he believes in. And unlike the Knight of Wands, the King of Wands will not be stopped. Think about like the entrepreneur that's like the mogul, right? He's got multiple streams of like successful incomes. He's built all kinds of things, all kinds of enterprises. So this is like our enterprising spirit. We're bold, we're determined, we're on fire, we have our skills, we've learned not to be so impulsive, and we've learned to actually channel all of this energy into more perseverance, into more determination, not to give up, but to continue to march to the beat of our own drum and beat our drum and be on fire for what we believe in and be passionate, right? Whilst at the same time, I think that we're really getting more fired up and excited because as we feel like the integration happening, so it's like as we feel the old getting further away, we realize that we're starting to really integrate this higher consciousness. Like the healing and the consciousness that we just took this big great leap over a chasm. It's like it's starting to like set in and we're starting to get to know our new selves. But it's like we don't have a mirror to look at ourselves, really. It's hard to see the growth and the progress until things happen that show us, oh, wow, like I really have come a long way. And so now it's about integrating all of that growth and that renewal and letting that old fall away. Part of this Mortifico card talks about like what was once presentable and acceptable is now despicable. And it's funny because like I can sit here and reflect on my old memories and old scenarios of ways that I was and ways that I was showing up, and I can feel, okay, yeah, I can see that I'm doing better. I can feel that I'm doing better. I can feel that I'm less triggered about that. I can see that like I wouldn't do that again in a dating scenario or whatever. But what ironically hit me the most poignantly, this showed me like the leaps and bounds of not only my growth, but like society, the collective's growth. You're gonna laugh. So I feel like I've watched the entire internet and all the streaming services and everything, and I was like, oh, well, there's nothing I can go back at. Like I'm rewatching The Chosen, but I get to like a little bit obsessive, and it's like it becomes the only thing I watch for months. And so I don't have like as like interesting things to talk about. I'm like one-dimensional. Not that like Jesus is the most interesting, yes, but like, you know what I mean. So I needed to mix it up. I need a little pop culture. So I was like, what do I want to watch? I'm not a reality show fan. And I noticed that Sex and the City was on Netflix, like all the seasons, and HBO keeps stuff in the vault forever. So I was like, oh wow, this is the first opportunity I've had to go back and rewatch the show ever. Like going from like beginning, starting, not just catching random episodes. And oh my God, does not hold up at all. It's so funny because at the time, like I remember when it came out originally, I was like around 9th grade. It came out when I was like in high school. And everybody just thought, oh wow, so bold, this show, it's so forward, it's so like modern, like wow, these women, who knew women wanted sex, and like all of this stuff. But like when I'm going back and watching the show, I'm like, their character, oh my God, they're awful. Like they're doing everything that you could possibly do wrong. And their consciousness is so shallow and like desperate. And they're also one-dimensional. Like Charlotte is the only one that's got anything going on for themselves. And I'm like, wow, we really idolize these women. And we've come so far. But just like watching each episode, me and my friend were talking about this the other day about how far we've come, like watching the show. But I'm like thinking, I'm watching Carrie and Samantha do these things, and I'm like, oh God, I'm cringing. I'm like, this is awful. Like you are, like Carrie's behavior towards Big, I'm just like embarrassed for her. I'm like, oh my God, like it's a wonder he dated you more than twice. Like she's so clingy and desperate and all these things. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to that show where it's just like for instance, like I don't know, if they have the slightest bad day, they're like, oh, I've got to go have sex with somebody. I've got to have shoes. I've got to go buy something. Like, it's just like, it's so crazy. It's like, I'm so grateful for all of the work that I've done and the spiritual awakening and all of it. I'm glad for all the struggle that I went through that made me look deeper into my life than just fashion and that level of like shallowness, you know? Did I know that show is like, it's a caricature, right? And it's honed in on this one concept, but still, it's just like, you know, when you watch something, you're like, this did not translate. And you can really just feel how far society has come. Like even down to our understanding of feminine energy versus masculine energy and just trying to shift into that feminine. And it's so funny because I'm like watching the show and I'm like, only Charlotte is in her feminine and like all of the other characters are like completely 100% their masculine. It's so funny because Charlotte's the only one that ends up having like this nice love life that's like pretty good, and she's got this like husband who loves her, like children and like dogs and all that, and like she hasn't made, but like the other ones they had these struggles just ongoing. So this alchemical wedding, this is talking about that integration of the growth and the healing and the, like when you take all of this consciousness that you learn, and it's not enough to just intellectualize it. That's what me and my nephew were talking about tonight at work. You have to really integrate it into your being and into who you are. It needs to like change your heart. Like if it doesn't awaken in you more understanding and compassion and love and forgiveness and patience and strength, then it's not the information alone doesn't do the work. It doesn't create miracles. It's like when you have that real heart awakening where you feel differently and you perceive differently, that's when it's really happening. And so I think that what's happening over this winter is that this integration is taking place. All of the work and the healing and the enlightenment and the transcendence is really doing its thing on a cellular level in our light body, in our spirit, in our soul, and on our consciousness. And I think we're starting to realize as we're being tested through the weeks of Capricorn with all of these old familiar tests that are coming up, and we're getting a chance to like meet them again, we're realizing, oh, wow, my nervous system is in better shape than it was. My consciousness is in better shape. I can handle this differently. I'm not completely emotionally driven and affected and, you know, being reflexive when I'm responding or showing up in this moment, you know? So I think we're starting to integrate the spirit into the material, right? We're letting our beliefs and our faith come through in our actions and in our day-to-day. And so I think that as we become more of this higher self, as we integrate that higher consciousness in, it's doing its thing. I think that too, okay. The other day I was talking about how the storm is over, and I was like, well, we're really just at the beginning of like so many storms. But the beautiful thing about the metaphor of the storm is that there's always another storm. But right now, we're over this part of the storm. The weather is calm. Next week, rain again, but we've got a few days, right? So that's what life is like, right? We have pressure. We meet the pressure, we evolve, things are stable for a while until they need to evolve again, and then there's more pressure. So I think that for the moment, we've gone through this intense exponential growth over the last couple of years. And so I think that right now, for the time being, it's about like not necessarily going in and trying to like dig everything up and picking at the scabs and looking for all the deep wounds. I think we've done a lot of that heavy lifting for the moment. And it's like having gone under surgery, right? And then now we're like letting the wound heal so we can see what we're working with. And it's like, this is like our convalescence before we start physical therapy, where we start training our muscles again. So that's kind of what's happening. It's like we're recovering from this spiritual surgery. And come springtime, we're going to get out there. We're going to start moving and putting all this into action again. But for now, it's like we're just doing this in a quiet, low-key, gentle way. While we're wintering, while we're integrating, while we're still letting that dark, quiet, fertile decay, cold stillness come over us and do its thing. But as we start to integrate this new awareness, this new consciousness, these new behaviors, these new habits and routines, and this new identity, it's like that's when things are going to really start moving forward. We've got the chariot card here, which is about forward movement, sudden momentum, a windfall of success and recognition, maybe like gaining some fame and recognition in your field of expertise, right? But the momentum of the chariot comes from our ability to like balance the governing forces within us, to balance that masculine and feminine energy, to bring the opposing forces within us into this corrected, balanced, harmonious state. And so as we're doing this work of the integration of the becoming, it's like things will start moving forward faster and faster. But the outer rewards, the outer success can't come too early, because it can't come and satiate us before we're finished with the transcendence, before the work is done. Unfortunately, as human beings, we don't usually evolve very much when we're happy and satiated and occupied and pacified. It's usually when we're in the heat, in the struggle, in the unknown, in the fear. And so we don't want to rush out of that. So if we can embrace the rest of this few weeks as we're kind of moving towards spring, I think that come spring, I think things will move forward very quickly if we sit with this and we let the healing happen and we do the work that is according to the season. So be with the season. Don't try to skip ahead. Spring is going to be here soon enough, and things are going to start really taking off. So enjoy the moment you have now. Enjoy any peace and quiet you have now to do that reflection, because the work that we're doing now is setting us up for the momentum that we're going to catch in the springtime. All right, you guys, I hope that serves you well. I know I've been talking about a lot of world events, and I know we're not usually so focused on the world events, but everything's just been so intense lately. And I think I'd be doing you a disservice and a disservice to my calling if I wasn't commenting on the greater things that we kind of need to be preparing ourselves for. You know, we do this inner work so that we're changing ourselves on the individual level, hoping to tip these cosmic scales. But, you know, at a certain point, there are moments in our collective where we have to use that collective consciousness, and we have to direct it wisely. And we have to start thinking about each other in a compassionate way as human beings, not as, well, you're on this side and I'm on this side. It's like we have to start thinking about one another as like we're all in this together as mankind. You know, we're all on this planet together, and soon, like, we're already there where we'll have these huge natural backlashes, and we're all in it together when we see when those things happen, you know. And as soon as everything's calmed down again, it's like people get divided again. But I think that so many people on all sides of the spectrum and in every group and every demographic are just wanting peace and unity and harmony. So I think that's what we ultimately want. And I think that's what we have to remember and hold on to right now. And, you know, it's okay to have disagreements and not agree with one another. That's the beauty of living in a free country. But the thing is that protects that liberty for everyone, even if you don't agree with them. So we're in complicated times, but hopefully we can find a way to navigate through this and become better for it. It's what I hope and I pray. I pray for everyone out there who's lives are feeling like they're maybe becoming disrupted in some way right now. It's it's never easy when everything feels like it's suddenly very insecure. So I'm just praying for everyone on earth to find hope and certainty and to be protected and to be guided and looked after, and for us to all wake up and love one another. All right. I will talk to y'all tomorrow. We will be back for our weekly romance oracle and tarot message. Fun. Let's see if we can find some love. All right. Ciao.